Well, folks, the 2028 presidential election is just around the corner, and Democrats are gearing up, and Republicans are gearing up for a bid for the 2028 presidential nomination. And today we're going to be specifically focusing on the 2028 Democrat primary, and specifically the case as to why Kamala Harris should not run for president in 2028. Now, you have to start, in order to even consider the idea of Kamala Harris not running in 2028, you first have to take a step back to the 2024 election. You have to remember, Kamala Harris lost the 2024 election. Donald Trump won 312 electoral votes, and she lost the popular vote by roughly 2 million votes. She lost it by 2.2 million votes, 2.3 million votes. She lost that race by. Harris lost all all 7 swing states. Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, and made it close in places like Maine. Some of the closest margins we've seen in places like California, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, New Hampshire. It was closer in 2016, but ultimately, these are some of the closest margins in Democrat safe seats and in the swing seats that we've seen in decades. Democrats also handed control of the government over to the GOP when they lost the Senate and the presidency, given the GOP a trifecta in Washington, D.C. They control the Senate by 6 seats. They control the House of Representatives by roughly 6 or 7 seats. And they control the presidency. And many Democrats want Kamala Harris to stay away. As the party has hit an all-time lows in approval ratings in the aftermath of the 2024 disaster, we are seeing Democrat approval ratings crater. We're talking 21 to 27% is kind of where things are at right now for the Democrat Party. They're seeing some of the worst approval ratings they have seen in decades. Well, simultaneously, the Republican Party has some of the highest polling that they have seen in decades as well. With almost a majority of Americans believing that the country is on the right track, we're bouncing anywhere from 44 to 49% of the country that believes we are on the right track. These are some of the highest numbers we have seen in decades. In the history of this is that losing candidates rarely make a comeback on the national stage like this. There's 2 big ones that you have to think about. Go back to the wonderful year of 1960. This was when Richard Nixon lost the presidential election to John F. Kennedy. It was a pretty close election. It's like this was a tight election. Look at this. Nixon won California by half a point. He won places like Colorado, which used to be much more Republican than they are right now. He won Washington. He won Oregon. He won Wisconsin, Maine. Some really big victories for Nixon in this race, but ultimately lost a very close race to John F. Kennedy. He only lost the popular vote by about 100,000 votes. 100,000 votes separated the two. Fast forward 8 years, you saw Nixon come back with a huge victory, beating out Hubert Humphrey, who is a senator, I believe, from Minnesota. Look at this. You saw how Johnson won in the aftermath of JFK being assassinated. Lyndon Baines Johnson won the 1964 election, flipping almost every single state to be a blue state. Well, at the same time, the states that voted for JFK and Byrd voted for Barry Goldwater. But now, fast forward to 1968. You see Richard Nixon coming back to a huge victory across the states. A huge victory. And then went on to 1972 to just blow it out of the water. He lost 2 states. Massachusetts and the District of Columbia. He came through and won Florida by 44 points. Texas by 33 points. New Mexico, 24 points. California by 13 points. Just a huge victory for Nixon. And then, of course, President Trump. 2016, won the election. Very close in these, in the blue wall. Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. He also flipped places like Florida. Maine's 2nd congressional district, he also flipped. We saw during the COVID pandemic, he went on to barely lose a very close election to Joe Biden in 2020, and then went on to 2024 to beat Kamala Harris, flipping Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin all back into the Republican column. These are the 2 big comebacks in American history. I'm sure there's some more on smaller scales, but these are some of the biggest ones because most losers are left behind from the party. They become relics of the past, and Harris is going to be no different, especially when it comes to how closely she aligned herself with the failures of the Biden administration during her 2024 campaign. She refused to distance herself from the very, very unpopular president, even when given the perfect opportunity to do so. We saw it time and time again that she just couldn't. She could not articulate, if anything, what she would do different as president relative to what Joe Biden did. She did not have a plan. And we know Joe Biden, he didn't want any daylight between the two of them, so it makes sense. But she wouldn't. She would not take the hit in order to win the election. Not saying she would have won the election. Do I think she could have made it a lot closer? I think so. I think it could have been closer. But granted, 2024 is over. And it will be very hard for her in 2028 to run away from the track record and the precedent she set in 2024 if she decided she was going to run in 28. The reality is she has aligned herself so closely with Biden's failures. The huge failures in the Biden administration are closely aligned with Kamala Harris. You look at the sky-high inflation post-pandemic. You look at the millions of illegal migrants that came across the southern border while she was the border czar. These are huge, epic failures. And even when she knew they were epic failures, she still refused to distance herself from those policies. And that's why it would be horrible for her, for the Democrats, to run her in 2028. And of course, in a 2028 primary, there's going to be a lot of challenges of a primary. Because I expect more than a dozen Democrats to jump in this race to get the party nomination. And to be honest, I expect a couple dozen to consider running in 2028. People like Pete Buttigieg, who is polling at a close second for 2028, who is laying down the groundwork for a 2028 presidential run by declining to run in the open Senate seat in Michigan, along with the governor's race in Michigan, where incumbent Governor Whitmer is term limited. You have people like Gavin Newsom, the current governor of California. He started a podcast. He's reportedly building out a network of donors for a 2028 bid, and we know he's desperate to be president. He's doing everything. He is laying the groundwork. This guy has no values. He's a paper tiger. Whatever direction the wind's blowing, that's the direction he's blowing. And of course, then AOC, who really, you have to give her some credit. As someone who leans to the right and would never vote for AOC, you have to give her credit for seizing on this opportunity to get huge amounts of support from the moderate wing of the Democrat Party, while at the same time, because she's doing everything she can to oppose Donald Trump, while at the same time becoming the new leader of the Bernie Sanders wing of the party. We all know Bernie's getting older. He's not going to be able to run this wing of the party forever. He just cannot continue this forever. And it seems he is handing over this portion of the party. He's handing over the reins to this coalition that he built over to AOC to lead this party forward. We see them going out on the road in these Fight the Oligarchy tours. We're seeing the massive amount of people that are being drawn out to this. She really is pulling a lot from the base. Now, that's a totally different question for an actual general election with AOC, but in a Democrat primary, she could perform really well if she could sew together that coalition of moderates and progressive Democrats. But those are not the only struggles for Harris. Many donors feel it would be embarrassing if she ran again, really citing donor fatigue and the major struggles of her first campaign. We've seen the polling. Look at this polling right here. This is terrible polling for Harris. You had a recent poll that came out that showed Pete Buttigieg leading Harris by 4 points in an Atlas Intel poll. Granted, Atlas Intel, they were the most accurate pollster in the 24 and 2022 election. The closest. But look at this. The aggregate, she has about a 10 percentage point bump on Buttigieg. She's getting 1 in 4 Democrat primary voters. This isn't standing out in polling. She is not standing out as some sort of front runner or incumbent in this race. We clearly can see that her ceiling is going to be somewhere around 30 to 35% at the most. And with an actual primary, a campaign where these other Democrats are going to spend heavily to discredit Kamala Harris so they can be the nominee, I guarantee you that this support will dwindle down as voters see candidates to lead them forward. Kamala Harris has the most name recognition out of anybody in this race right here. Hands down. And yet she's only pulling 1 out of every 4 Democrat voters. That's not good for an incumbent. That's not good for an incumbent, at all. Let's go back to 2016. And we can look at some of, let's see, can we find the election forecast? No. We want to find, Let's take a look at this quick. It's like, look at this poll from back in 2013. You're seeing Hillary Clinton lead in by huge margins in this polling. And that just is simply not where Kamala Harris is. She is not leading by these huge margins going into 2028, into the primaries. She just simply does not have that lead. She is running way too closely with other Democrats who do not have anywhere near the same amount of name recognition that she has. And that alone should be huge warning, like red flags for the Democrat Party on why she should not run in 2028. And then the last big thing before we get to the alternative is the party sentiment. Although during her 107-day campaign, her approval rating really skyrocketed due to the fact that the media was pushing her very hard. They was claiming that she was a flawless candidate, was running a flawless campaign, and her approval rating got up close to 50%. But we've seen every day since then. There was a recent YouGov poll that came out that showed that her approval rating was roughly about 38%. You have a terrible approval rating. I believe it was this YouGov poll right here that had Harris. And look at this. They would consider, okay, so that's what they would consider the ideal. Look, only the ideal, only 20. Still, look at this. Only a quarter say that she would be the ideal candidate. And she has one of the highest ratings when it comes to disappointment if she were the nominee. It is just absolutely ridiculous. Because here's the reality. Her approval rating has been dropping steadily since then. Steadily. She was above water before the election. She's very much underwater since then. Very much underwater since that happened. Because roughly 38% of Americans have a positive view of Harris and only 33% of independents have a positive view of her. And with the overall party at roughly a 21 to 29, 28, 27% approval rating, it would be a very good idea if Harris did not run in 2028. Because she would hinder any rebranding the party did and just remind Americans of how unpopular the Democrats are, how unpopular the policies that they espouse are, and reconnect them with the very unpopular Biden presidency. She would basically be handcuffing them, the party, to the Biden presidency, which she did a horrible job. Not only as vice president, but then distanced herself from the president. She was the border czar. She is the reason 10 to 20 million illegal immigrants poured across the border while Biden was in office. We know it was over 10 million just by the numbers, but who knows how many aren't accounted for? How many got through that? We just have no idea about it. And if Democrats want to win, they need to abandon Kamala Harris and move forward. That's what they need. They need to abandon her. But what can Kamala Harris do instead? What are her alternatives? Well, we know she has been considering a run for the 2026 California governor's race. We know she's been considering a run. The current governor, Gavin Newsom, is term limited in 2026, and she is really seen as a viable replacement for him. Now, Harris was elected statewide as the attorney general in the state. She was also elected as a senator in the state and then selected as a vice president from the state. And although the primary is crowded right now, I think it's fair to say it's a decently crowded, which makes sense because whoever wins the Democrat nomination or whoever moves on to the general election who's a Democrat will most likely win. Because although it's a crowded primary, it would clear up a lot if Harris was in this race. You see on here multiple people. Katie Porter will withdraw if Kamala Harris is in this race. Now, obviously, a number of people who aren't, but I think that this is a liberal stronghold, and I think she would do very well here in a California governor's race. And Harris has made it very clear that this is a binary decision. It's either 26 or 28, not both. In 26, running for the governor's race in 26 offers a much more viable and a safer, how would you say this, a safer path to an electoral victory or back into elected office again. And she would most likely win the race if she won or if she jumped in. She could use this even as a bridge to a 2032 run. I don't think 28 is in the cards for her. She may try and run in 2032. It'd be a totally different map then. But she could run in 2032, and if she could stay relevant as the governor of the biggest state in America, I think that she could rebuild her national presence, her national profile to run in 32. Because that's all this would be. It would be national profile building, distancing herself again from the Biden administration. She needs to put in some serious work to distance herself from the Biden administration. She did a terrible job with it. But ultimately, she still risks losing relevance on the national stage if she takes this route instead of 2028. But I think the risks are even higher if she goes for the presidency in 28. Because if she were the nominee in 2028, the Democrats will lose. It will be a terrible election for the Democrats if she's the nominee in 28. And just to recap everything, Harris would face a significant challenge in 2028 in a primary that would most likely turn out very badly for her. And her what little reputation she has left would be completely tarnished. And a race for California governor in 26 offers a much more viable path for her in a safe Democrat state. And if she were to lose the 2028 presidential primary, like we said, it would indefinitely tarnish her reputation. It would be over with. She would not have a path back into into elected office. Whereas a 26 run could still give her that opportunity to run in 32 and hold on to her reputation or what little she has left of it, or could be intact at that point. Because she needs to do a lot more groundwork and lay in that groundwork, which she just hasn't been doing. She has not been doing it so far. She needs to be laying that groundwork to further distance herself from the Biden administration, further distance herself from the horrible policies. But at the end of the day, good luck. Good luck asking the oil workers in Pennsylvania why we can't frack anymore. Good luck with that. I really wish you the best of luck convincing Pennsylvania voters that we shouldn't have fracking anymore. Because that's what she wants. She's flip-flop on so many issues. From 2020 or 2019, her first run for president, and then in 24, it was just terrible. Some of the worst campaigns we've ever seen in modern American history, and for those reasons, Kamala Harris should not run for president in 2028. Now, granted, if she did, it'd probably be good for the Republicans. They'd be able to smash on her just like they did in 24. I think it would she has a lot of liabilities on the table, which would be good for the Republicans. So maybe I want her to run. But if I were a Democrat, absolutely not. No chance I would let this lady lead the party. No chance. I wouldn't trust her to lead a 7-Eleven, let alone the United States of America. That's where we're at right now. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you for listening to this. Drop down below, hit that subscribe button, make sure you never miss another video from us again in the future, and let me know your thoughts down below. Do you think she should run? Do you think she should not run? What are your thoughts behind that? We'll catch you next time, folks.